Let's get comfy, guys. I really hope you are watching this on a weekend because I feel like this is cozy sleepover vibes. So grab your blanket, grab your mug. This was made for me by my sister. If you're a fan of Six of Crows, this is my Six of Crows mug that she made me because it's one of my favorite books. Anyway, let's get started. We are jumping into a really fun episode today. But if you are new here, my name is Shalini, and this is the Reel Thesis Podcast. I'm a screenwriter, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a lawyer, and I basically started this podcast because I wanted to analyze how stories are told on screen, what works, what doesn't work, how to convey very complex ideas and themes and images on screen, and how that all conveys a story to the watcher. Last time I said we were going to do a fun episode. So this time we are covering the 2019 film Booksmart. I love this film. I saw it in theaters. I've seen it a few times since. I watched it 2 to 3 times to prepare for this episode, and I absolutely love it. But I will say, no trigger warnings. For once, there are no trigger warnings in this film, but there's going to be spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, go watch the film and then tune back into this episode. But let's dive in. This film is the directorial debut of Olivia Wilde, who has since done Don't Worry, Darlings, and The Insiders. Not quite sure I'm going to cover those films yet. And it was written by, I have to look at my list, Emily Halpern, Sarah Haskins, Katie Silberman, and Susanna Fogel. And it is a very stacked cast. It stars Beanie Feldstein, Caitlin Denver. It has Lisa Kudrow, Will Forte, Olivia Wilde's husband at the time, Jason Sudeikis, Jessica Williams. We have very young stars like Billy Lord. Who else? Skylar Gisondo. There's just a ton of people in the film, and I think the cast really carries this film, so I really wanted to mention them. I also think it's an extraordinary script. I always mention the writers, but you could really see how each of these different writers, if you go look at the work that they've done, you could almost see what they've contributed to this film, and they've worked on other stuff that is very cool, so I definitely wanted to shout out the writers for this film. Okay, let's talk about the story. Our story begins with Molly, and she is sort of a very cerebral, high-achieving woman. She really looks up to strong female leaders, very smart. We can see that she's valedictorian of her class, and she is just very cerebral, and she also sort of looks down on others for partying and being a little too wild as teenagers. We also have her best friend, Amy, who's played by Caitlin Denver, and Amy is a little bit shyer. She really fights for people's rights. We know that she advocated for a gender-neutral bathroom, and she's going to Botswana to make tampons for women. And the story starts on their very last day of high school, and as they go about their day, we get to learn a few other characters. There is Nick, who is sort of the girl magnet of the class, and he's played by Mason Gooding. We have Triple A, played by Molly Gordon, who is kind of the class slut. We have Jared, who is this guy who's very rich, who tries to buy people's affections, played by Skylar Gisondo, and his best friend Gigi, who is just this completely out there, super dramatic rich girl, and she's played by Billy Lord. We have Ryan, who is played by Victoria Rusega. Ryan is this very cute skater girl, and she is also the girl who Amy has a crush on. We also have this loner outcast girl, played by, her name is Hope, and she's played by Diana Silvers. And we have Miss Fine, who is this very cool young teacher. She's very cool with all of her students. She's played by Jessica Williams. And lastly, we have George, played by Noah Galvin, and Alan, played by Austin Crute. And they both are theater nerds. Now, like I said, we learn about them over the course of their last day of school. So they're at lunch, and basically we're sort of learning about these characters, and Molly pressures Amy to go talk to Ryan, and it just goes very awkwardly. And in doing so, Amy learns that Nick is having a party that night, which is the night before graduation. And Molly is just like, that's so stupid. Someone always gets arrested the night before graduation. And then she goes to pee in their all-gender bathroom, which I didn't mention, but, Amy advocated for an all-gender bathroom. So she's peeing, and when she's peeing, Triple A, played by Molly Gordon, and this guy Tanner and Theo walk in, and they're just talking very badly about Molly. They're sort of just making fun of her for being not about being smart, but how high and mighty she is about being smart, and like how stuck up she is about it and sort of like how she thinks she's better than everyone else. And Molly comes out of the stall and she's like, you know what? What you say doesn't bother me because my hard work paid off and I'm going to Yale and you guys can go to whatever party schools you're going to. And AAA tells her, hey, I'm actually going to Yale too. And she doesn't believe her. And it come to find out, AAA is going to Yale, Tanner is going to Stanford, Theo is coding for Google for like 6 figures. And she is just shocked. And she's like, I don't get it. Like, you guys didn't study. Like, you didn't care about school. And AAA tells her, no, we didn't only care about school. And Molly absolutely freaks out. She rushes out of the bathroom. And I forgot to mention that they have a school policy that you are not allowed to talk about where you're going to college. So she has no idea where anybody's going until this moment. And in a fit of anger, she rushes up to people and finds out that people are going to Harvard and they're going to Georgetown and they're going to like absolutely insane schools. And all these people are the people that she has looked down upon and who have partied and have fun. And she is just absolutely livid. Later that day, her and Amy are trying to have like a celebration, and she is just so pissed off. And she was like, we are the ones who just basically only cared about school, and everyone else partied and lived their life and did school. And we're the only ones who didn't do both. So we have to go to a party tonight, and we have to go to Nick's party. So she talks Amy into going to Nick's party. They get dressed for the evening. They go out, but they have absolutely no idea where the party is. So on a whim, Molly calls Jared, and he's like, yeah, I'll take you to a party. So he picks them up and takes them to a party on a boat in the marina. And they're like, okay, let's just go. Maybe someone at the party is going to know where Nick's party is. So they go and they find out that there is nobody at the party except for Jared and Gigi. And on top of that, like Jared has just completely gone over the top. He's bought like iPads for everybody. They have like a full spread. They have a DJ. They have waiters. Like it is just too much. And it is very clear he's trying to buy people's affections. And Molly's like, you need to stop trying so hard. And he was like, I like why you try hard. Anyway, Gigi is sort of out there and wacky, and she feeds them strawberries and picks a fight with the staff and jumps off the boat. So they bail. And, Amy's ready to call it a night. But then Molly calls Malala. And we learn nothing about Malala, but we find out from Amy's reaction that it's basically a no questions asked pact to do what the other asks. So Amy's like, fine, let's go to the second party. Alan texts them an address and was like, yeah, come to the party. And they're like, oh, thank God, we finally got the address. So they call a Lyft. The Lyft driver ends up being Jordan, their principal, and it's a very awkward drive. They find out, they're not really paying attention, but we find out that Jordan is also a screenwriter, a writer on top of being an Uber driver. And for some reason, they decide to watch porn in the backseat and it accidentally gets broadcast over the stereo. It's so awkward, but they finally arrive at party number 2. And it is a murder mystery dinner party hosted by George. And they're just like, this is not the party we wanted. So they walk in and George is like, fine, you can just be these like 2 extra characters I've cast in this dinner party. Like, just go. And they're like, all right, someone here might know where Nick's party is. They go and socialize and they run into Gigi, surprisingly. And Gigi's like, wow, you guys are doing so well after I drugged you. And they're like, wait, what? And so they run upstairs and they have this hilarious hallucination that they're Barbie dolls. And they question, what the hell is going on. But basically they leave the party and ride the rest of the high outside. And at this point, Amy's like, Molly, we got to go home. We're done. Like, we've done enough. And Molly is like, no, we have got to go to Nick's party. And Amy's like, why? Like, why do you need to go to Nick's party? And Gigi pops up. Gigi has this theme of just popping up. And Gigi pops up and is like, well, because Molly likes Nick. And Molly refuses to like accept that Nick could ever like her. And Amy talks her into it. And they decide to go to Nick's party. But they still don't have the address. So they decide to do what they do best, and they go to the library and they research. And in their research, they realize that there was about 15 pizzas delivered to the party, so they go to the pizza place to try and get the information. They tie their hair in front of their faces like a mask, and they hide in the back of the delivery guy's car, and they basically mug him for information. And they're like, you've got to tell us where the address is. And he was like, you guys are crazy. Like, you have no idea what I could have done to you if I was a crazy person. I could have driven you to a shack and tied you up and like done horrible things to you. Like, you guys have no street smart. Why would you climb in the back of a car? But nonetheless, he gives them the address. Molly's phone is about to die. She basically just makes one frantic call to none other than Miss Fine, who picks them up, takes them to the party, gives them way cuter clothes to wear, and basically is just like, girls, you should have fun. Like, have fun in college. I mean, have fun in high school. So they arrive at the party and everyone is very excited to see them. Like, everyone is like, oh my God, you guys came. Like, let's hang out. Let's do things. They're offering them drinks. They're just really vibing. Like, they basically go their separate ways. Amy's hanging out with Ryan, and Ryan is like, I always wanted you to come out and hang. And Molly is like mad flirting with Nick, and she's almost like negging him, and he's really like leaning into it. And then he's like, he says something like, I only fuck with Hufflepuffs, or maybe I don't fuck with Hufflepuffs. And then she's just like, oh my God, like, Harry Potter. And then he reads her as like a Slytherin Ravenclaw, and it just totally turns her on. And they're playing beer pong, and after a while, everybody except for Molly ends up in the pool. And while they're in the pool, Amy sees Nick and Ryan making out, and she's completely distraught. She gets out of the pool, and she immediately goes to find Molly, and she doesn't want to tell her like why she wants to leave, because she really wants to spare Molly's feelings, because at this point, Molly really thinks that Nick likes her and something could happen. So she wants to spare her, so she just calls him Malala. And we know that Malala is no questions asked, but Molly says no. And this ignites a fight. She calls Amy a coward and that she just doesn't ever want to do anything. And Amy tells Molly that she's too pushy. And we find out in this fight that Amy is not going to Botswana for the summer. She's actually going for a whole year, which throws off all of the plans that Molly had for the both of them. And it's just a very sad fight between the two of them. They're just isolated. Everyone's kind of watching them. And after their fight, Amy goes to the bathroom where Hope is hiding. And Hope is really mean to her. She's like, you are a coward. And Amy's like, well, you're just a mean girl. And then they start hooking up. But the vibe is killed because Amy throws up all over Hope. And during this time, Molly is talking to Jared. And we sort of learn why Jared is friends with Gigi. He's like, she's a very sad girl, but she's an extremely loyal friend. And he's like, I'm also just trying to get out of here and get to a place where, I think people will really see me, and I probably find people who are more like me and stuff. And Molly goes to find Amy, but cops arrive and everybody has to bail. But there's a small group of people stuck in the house who can't escape because of where they're located. So Amy's like, I'm going to create a diversion. So she runs at the cops, and Molly's like walking home, and AAA picks her up, and they have a really sweet conversation where AAA is like, like, she basically reveals like, high school sucked for me too. Like, I didn't like being called AAA. Like, it sucked, and it was hurt when the girls called me that. And like, she basically confesses like, high school's not been perfect for me, and it has sucked in its own ways. And I also just want to be in a place where people can see me for who I am. And she takes Molly home, and Molly goes to bed and wakes up the next day to like a million messages basically saying that Amy was arrested. So she goes to the jail, and on her way in, she sees a wanted sign for none other than the pizza delivery guy. So they decide to basically leverage information for the pizza delivery guy, who's apparently a wanted felon, to get Amy out. They rush to graduation. Molly kisses Jared in front of everybody and delivers her graduation speech. And in the closing scenes, we see that Hope stops by and gives Amy her clothes back and gives her number. And Molly drives Amy to the airport, and they have a very tearful, sad goodbye. And Amy goes in, and Molly's driving away, and it's really sinking in that they're going to be separate for the first times in her life. And then the scene is cut short by Amy jumping in front of the car and being like, I can be the last one on the plane. Do you want to get pancakes? And Molly's like, fuck yeah, I do. Fuck yeah. So that's the spoilers. Honestly, I really, you should see it. Do not rely on my like take on this film. I'm so serious. Go see it, because the filming and the acting does way more justice. But that's a recap if you haven't seen it in a while and you just need to remember what's happening. But let's dive into the analysis. The film is a worldview genre, meaning that the central conflict of the film surrounds the character coming face to face with something that doesn't align with their internal values. Therefore, they have to change in order to function and thrive in this new world. We do have two main characters, but I think oftentimes we do follow Molly's story and get a little bit more insight into her than we do Amy. So, for the purpose of this analysis, Molly is going to be our main character, but obviously it's a buddy film, so I will be talking about both. So, starting with Molly's character. The first few minutes of this scene start with panning around her bedroom, and within this just pan around her bedroom, we see trophies. We see all of these photography of Michelle Obama, like books on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and we should all be feminists. We see her graduation outfit and her valedictorian outfit. And he's listening to this like affirmation tape that is just like, you've done it. You've done better than all these other fuckers. Like, you've earned this. So without any interaction with anybody or any dialogue, we really understand a lot about Molly. And then we see her interact in the real world. She goes to the principal and is like, we need to go over the end of year budgets. And he is like, no, like we're good. We're done for the year. So we know she's very by the book. Her and Amy talk crossword puzzles with Ms. Fine. So they know that like they don't feel weird about being nerds about crossword puzzles with Ms. Fine. And she has a very cute friendship with Amy. And Amy, we don't get as much exposition with. We don't get to see her bedroom, but we do get to see her car, which has all this like really advocacy bumper stickers on it. She tells Molly not to call AAA, like that's just derogatory towards other women. We know she's going to Botswana to make tampons. And we see that they just absolutely adore each other. And I bring all of this up because basically we are getting an extremely fleshed out characters. We're not getting exposition. We're not getting a regurgitation of what their values are or what their beliefs are. Like, yes, it is being told to us simply, but especially when we see the way that the characters are interacting with other people, we see these values internalize in the way that it comes out and acts with others. They really interacts with others. They're extremely proud of their intelligence, of their achievements, of how smart they are. They're always rolling their eyes at people who are just being really stupid or childish or just really acting their age. And my point is that we are getting characters who have been living with these beliefs and these value systems and these quirks for so long. So it comes off in the acting and it comes off in the writing. They're not just performing a quirk. It's almost like they have been living with it. The characters feel extremely real because they have been living with these beliefs, and it comes out, and it doesn't feel like a writer is just putting these traits on top of a character to be a certain way. It seems like they have let it sink in and really explored what a character like this would do. How would they walk? How would they talk? How would they interact with the principal, with the teacher, with other classmates, with each other? And it comes out extremely rich, and it comes out fresh because it feels very real for us. It feels very real, and it completely aligns with the way a character who has these beliefs and who has these thoughts. I also want to talk a little bit about their friendship. One of the beautiful things about their friendship is that we know they spend all of their time together, and a part of it is just like they live in their own little world. And this adds a lot of humor to the film because they're just like they're two little Barbie girls living in their Barbie world, but like they're so insular and they're so self-affirming and affirming to one another that it is so cute, and it allows us to cheer for them because they're so happy in their world. And it really strengthens the characters because the relationship feels lived in. Like, we have no idea when they met. We have no idea when they're best friends, but it's all portrayed in the ways that they act with one another, the ways they're written. In the same way I'm talking about who these women are individually, you also see it in their friendship. We're not getting a backstory. And, I'll compare it to Promising Young Women, where we do find out through verbal exposition that her and Cassie and Nina were friends since they were 4. We have no idea. But we know these two girls have been friends for a long time because they have a very lived-in friendship. So that was a very depth to the character that I think was necessary, that just made the film feel very refreshing and different. I won't touch on too many other characters, but I will say that like our introduction to a lot of the characters, when I was explaining them, I was like, Nick is a hot guy, Triple A is a slut, Ryan is a skater girl. And, the whole problem that Molly has is that she has a very one-dimensional view of herself and of others. So we are introduced to these characters in very singular dimensions, and we are meant to understand them that way until she also has a broader understanding of them. So it's just interesting. Like the point is that we do have, like, we're also meant to be shocked along with Molly as she's learning all these things that just basically don't jive with the way she's thought about these people. The next element of the story that I want to talk about is the goal. So in the story, Molly finds out that everybody thinks that she's stuck up and does nothing but study. So she wants to prove that she's not stuck up and she can do other things besides study. That's it. Like, her goal is very simple. She wants to go to a party. This goal, although it's so simple, is so solid for 3 reasons. There's an external component to it that we see. She wants to go to a party to prove that she's cool, that she can go do something other than study. So it puts her on this physical journey of trying to accomplish this goal. But there's an internal component to it. The internal component is that I want you guys to see me as someone else other than just a person who studies. Like, I need you to see that I can be so much more than just this, that I can be multidimensional, that I can be so many other things too. And I think, like, not all of us can really relate to this feeling of wanting to go to a party, let alone wanting to go to a party the night before graduation. But I think the internal component of the goal is solid and it's very universal and is things I think a lot of people can feel, which is like, I just want you to see me. Like, I am fun. I am cool. I'm not just a nerd. Like, I can be all these things and I want you to see that in me. And I think it's the internal component of the goal that makes this very universal. Like, you don't have to want to go to a party, but deep down, you understand that her wanting to go to a party is really about wanting people to see her for who she is. And you can understand that and connect with that. So it creates a connection that people are able to have despite the fact that they may not be in a situation or they may not understand, or, it resonates and almost keeps you hooked to the story. The last thing I'll mention is that it's a specific goal. And I think this gets overlooked a lot, that it's not any goal. Like, it has to be a specific goal for that character. And this goal is that she has to go to Nick's party, and she has to go to Nick's party because she likes Nick. And there's also probably a secondary element of, like, everybody's at Nick's party, especially the people who made fun of her. So she needs to prove it to them. But, like, they go to 2 different parties and it doesn't matter because it has to be Nick's party. So I think it nails it on every single level. It nails an external component that is driving the story from plot point to plot point. It has an internal component that we're secretly rooting for her because we're like, yeah, we also want that for you. And it's a very specific component, which creates a lot of, like, constraints on the story. And it can't just be anything. It's something that's very easily accomplished. And it also directly ties to her specifically. Like, it is a direct connection, something that Molly alone would feel and Molly alone would feel driven to. I mean, anyone would want to go to the party. But my point is that it has to be extremely specific and make sense for that character. And you also learn that, like, she's the president of the class and Nick is the vice president. So, like, it's not like they never talk. Like, they've worked together quite a lot over the course of the year. So, like, that was another, like, line that was dropped that, it's like they don't have a friendship, but, like, they have been working together and spending time together. So it makes sense that she would develop a crush on him. Okay, let's move on to setting. I'm not talking about the physical setting of the film. I'm sort of talking about the parameters of this world. This story takes place in a very contained world. And so we have to understand the unspoken rules that govern it, the parameters of it. So the parameters of the world end up being something that both influence the character's actions and also cause constraints or roadblocks. We have 3 main parameters to the story. One is that they're in high school. Several components to that. They're young. They have to lie to sneak out of the house. They don't have a car. They're not in the real world. And so they're constrained by their knowledge that they have at this time. They're constrained by what they're able to do, where they're able to go, like the fact that they don't have access to cars and things like that. They have to always call lifts. There's that constraint of college. There's also the constraint of just the fact that, like, they're in an environment with the same people for at least 4 years, if not longer. So there's a constraint of just being in a world that you're so familiar with. And we feel that, like, familiarity. We definitely get the sense that everybody is just sick of each other and, like, they're over it. Like, it is a kingdom and a world into itself. The second constraint, which is introduced very early in the film, is that we don't talk about colleges. This functions much more as a plot constraint. I've said before that we're always asking the question, why do we get this story and why now? And this answered the question of why now. They would have found out in January, February, March when they were getting into colleges. But because they're not allowed to talk about it, she doesn't find out to the last day of school. She feels incredibly stupid. And so she has only one night to prove that she can have fun in college before she graduates high school the next day. It could be, you can think whatever you want about the constraint, but it's a constraint that works because it puts a time pressure on the story, and every story needs a time pressure, and it just makes sense. She has something to prove tonight before they graduate tomorrow. The very last constraint of the story, which is probably my favorite, is everybody in their school is very self-assured and a little over the top and eccentric. And, it goes beyond just being in a high school setting. Everybody's a character, and I absolutely love it because I think it adds to, you can see the relationships between people and how they're like low-key friends. Like nobody really hates anybody and nobody's like a straight up bully to anybody else, but they're all just kind of like, you're so annoying. And so that felt really realistic, but the characters are so over the top that it still felt entertaining. And I enjoy that film. And I definitely say that this is a parameter because these characters, they're all seniors in high school. So they're like at the top of their game and loving life and very self-assured. And because everybody is this way, they're kind of all stepping on each other and getting in each other's ways, or at least getting in Molly's way. And they become the antagonizing forces for her plot, which we are going to dive into next. Before we go on, we're going to stop for a water break. Water, drink it. Okay, I just talked about antagonizing forces, so let's jump into the conflict of this film. The whole film is, the instigating incident is that Molly overhears in the bathroom that basically most of these kids, or at least 3 of these kids, think that she's stuck up and full of herself because all she does is study, and she's like overly proud about it and looks down at others for partying and having fun. The actual conflict of the film is just that nobody knows or is capable of giving Molly and Amy the address to Nick's party. And it is that simple. And plays off as very funny because the forces in her way are her classmates. They're very eccentric, they're very over the top. And so their goals as antagonizing forces directly intercept her goals. And the ironic thing is they all have the same goal, which is they're all trying to end high school with a bang, that they all have different ways of doing it. And because they're so self-assured and so in their own worlds, they basically just bump up against each other and get in each other's way. And, Jared is trying to have an off the chain end of year party. So he drags Molly and Amy to it, but that's not what they want. And Alan wants them to come to this dinner party. And so they end up there, but that's not what they want. And it's just it's almost like too many characters that are all stuffed in this tiny space, and they're suffocating each other and blocking each other and, getting in each other's way. And it works as a story because it's just so clear that the antagonizing forces' goals really stop Molly's goals. And it's funny because they're all just trying to enjoy the last night of high school. And it's also funny because it's low stakes. This is a self-imposed goal, and she can easily prove in many ways that she's fun and cool, but it's a self-imposed goal. And it's funny that these kids are so, just so funny and crazy in their own ways that they're all just trying to do their own thing at night. And it makes it an easy film to watch because there's no dire consequences. Like Amy says, at the end of the day, if they never made it to Nick's, they still went to 2 parties. It's a very low stakes film. So you're not stressed out about this. You can watch it with ease and you can laugh about the fact that they're all just getting in each other's way. Amy, however, has a different antagonizing force. Sadly, I say her antagonizing force is Molly, because she doesn't really want to go. She goes because she loves Molly. They spend all their time together. She probably wants to spend her last night in high school with Molly. It sort of seems like she packs and leaves for Botswana within the next few days. So she wants to spend time together, but she doesn't want to go to these parties, and Molly keeps forcing her to. So for a lot of the film, Molly is the antagonizing force, but when Amy goes to the bathroom and Hope is very mean. And I actually really hate that they start hooking up because Hope says really mean things to her. And she's like, "You're a coward, like you're meek, and I hate meek people." And I'm like, I hate when people, I say this all the time, but it's like I hate when people are really mean to each other and they start hooking up. And I was like, why would you start hooking up after she said all these really mean things to you? But it actually drives my point home, which is like Hope calls her meek and she calls her a coward. And at this point, Amy came out much earlier as gay, but she had never kissed a girl. She'd never been with a girl. So I think Hope calling her meek and cowardly instigated Amy into being like, I'm not. And let me show you I'm not. So she kisses Hope and Hope is really into it and they start hooking up. And then we also, I think what Hope said also instigates Amy to be like, you know what? I'm not a coward. Well, she says, I'm not a coward. And so she runs at the police, which it like gives me a shock. Like they're all standing in the living room and all the kids are hiding. And she literally like runs out at them. And I'm like, oh my God, who runs at police? Like that's, ugh, it like makes me so nervous to see that. But it instigates Amy to be like, you know what? I'm going to distract them and be courageous about this. And it's interesting because like the thing that instigates Molly into action is like overhearing a conversation about her, people saying bad things about her in a bathroom. And that's kind of what mirrors with Amy. It's like something really mean said about her in a bathroom that instigates her into action. But regardless of the fact that the two of them have different antagonists, oh, I also say like Amy, like she doesn't like Jared's boat party, but she was like actually like fine with George's party. She probably could have stayed there. And it was Molly that was like, we've got to go. We've got to find someone who knows where Nick's party is. But despite the fact that these two women have different antagonizing forces, they're still on the same journey, which brings me to structure. So this is we got a physical journey of the girls trying to go to party. Party 1, party 2, party 3. But it doesn't matter what the parties are because it's really the journey of them trying to have a more complex view of themselves and of others. And it takes every single event at every single party to get to this point. So I'm going to run through a few plot points that really, drive home my point. One of the first things is we learn that like at the boat, Molly's like tells Jared, like, stop trying to buy people's affections. And he was like, I like, stop trying so hard. And he's like, but I like when you try hard. Like, we learn that Jared is kind of aware what he does and he's not ashamed of it. And he also admires that in Molly. We learn that their principal can be a writer and author. They learn a little bit about sex. They learn they can survive their first trip. They learn basically how to mug someone for information. And they also learn why that was a really stupid idea. In this, like Molly accepts that she can be someone who Nick likes. When they get to the party, they learn that everybody's like really excited to see them and is totally down to hang out. Molly learns that Nick is into Hufflepuffs, not into Hufflepuffs. I wish I could remember the quote, but it was like, I don't fuck with Hufflepuffs, or I only fuck with Hufflepuffs. I can't remember. Anyway, one of those two. But anyway, he's into like Harry Potter and all that stuff. Amy learns that Ryan is into guys and not girls like she thought. Molly learns that Jared is just trying to survive high school and that she learns why Gigi is a good friend and she's just, that Jared is just trying to get out and trying to be in a place where people get him. And she also learns that AAA is like, hurt over the way high school has gone for her sometimes and it wasn't always great and it sucked. And she just wants to be in a place where she can be wholly herself and not just seen as the class slut. And it's this conversation that really comes full circle because when they enter the school, we're introduced to Nick and we're introduced to AAA and, we learn that she's a slut and it's AAA's conversation that really instigates Amy into action. So her making peace with AAA in the end is really a full circle moment in Molly's realization that not just others, but herself can be more than just one thing, that they can be so many things and they can be complex. And at the end of the day, everybody just wants to be seen for who they are and not for these stereotypes or these labels that others have put on them. And we see that in her graduation speech. And I love her graduation speech because she says like, I used to be afraid of you, but I see you now and you're all pretty great. And, don't let college fuck it up. And I love that line because it's very beautiful. And she fully, completely sees people and can appreciate them for who they are. And she can appreciate that about herself. So the structure works because we're not getting, it was like we sort of get these things that start to break, around party one and the lift ride and stuff. Like in the first part of the journey, we're getting these things that start to break her perception. And then we're getting these things that really start to form larger cracks in her perception. And then it ends with the things that are challenging her perception are very deeply challenging internal beliefs that she has held about herself or about others. And it's very layered on. And I think it works. I think my point is that it's littered very evenly throughout the structure so that over the course of the whole evening, her perspective is changing on people, and it's very evenly placed throughout the structure. So that when you're getting to the bigger realizations of, yeah, like Jared kind of just wants to be around people who get him. And AAA has been hurt in high school too, even though she's like very popular and everybody likes her. Like when you get to these big realizations, we're at the point where Molly can really understand it and receive it because her perception has started to crack, and the cracks are getting bigger and bigger and bigger until she can actually be receptive to what she's hearing and not just cynical about it. So I'm touching on this just to say it was a very balanced structure, and we didn't just get barrage of information when information wasn't all stuffed in one scene. It was really trickled throughout the screenplay, which made it feel very balanced. It didn't feel overwhelming, and at the same time, it still made the ending feel very hard-earned. The last thing I'm going to touch on is theme. The theme of this movie is friendship. I don't need to tell you that, but I want to talk a little bit more about how the film shows it instead of tells us. So we're introduced to Molly, but then she is stepping out of her apartment to go because Amy's picking her up, and they are just starting to dance as Molly's walking to the car and Amy gets out, and they're dancing in the street, and they're just standing there like goofballs dancing, and they're like, I missed you. And the other one's like, yeah, I missed you too, but it's only been a day. And it was so cute. It was such a cute introduction to their friendship because I didn't need to know anything. And I mentioned that we don't get any information. We don't know how long they've been friends. They could have been friends for 2 years for all we know. But I guess these traits about these women were lived in, and the writers asked, like, okay, someone who is in this friendship, how would they act? And it's probably worth mentioning that Olivia Wilde asked them to room together for a month before filming. So I think a lot of their friendship and their like synchronism was actually from the time they've spent together. So it really came out in the film and it really worked. And we didn't need any exposition. We didn't need words. We didn't need pictures. We didn't need anything. Like just us seeing how quickly they got on each other's pages was enough to convey the information that they are best friends. Similarly with Malala, we don't know why it's called Malala. We don't know anything about it other than it's a no questions asked pact, and you only get 1 to 2 a year, and that's it. And that's all we need to know because we are not these characters. Like it is not necessary for us to know any of this information. We don't need to know how it was created. We don't need to know the parameters. We don't need to know anything. All we need to know is that it's a very, very big deal, and it just means you have to do what I say. I need you to just have my back on this. And it's another good thing. Like, I think I like it because it just feels like we're not getting, we aren't wasting time on information that is not needed. And I think that's an extremely important thing to ask. And, when I was working on this essay, I remember things I was told as an English major, which is like, you gotta just cut out words. Like, don't be so wordy. And I feel that with the script. It's like, did we need like a flashback scene on how Malala was created? No. All we need to see is how Malala plays out now. And we see it in Amy's reaction. Like she is shocked. And that's it. That's all we need to know. And it just feels like information is handed to us so quickly. And that's why the film feels like it moves. And that's why it feels like it's so packed, because we're getting like such a well-packaged amount of information in the most succinct way possible. And it is just so well done. And the last thing I'll say about the theme of their friendship is the party and the fight that they have. So when they get to the party, they go their separate ways, and they're hanging out with their respective crushes. And then they, basically Amy sees that Nick and Ryan are kissing. And so she's distraught and she gets out of the pool and she's searching for Molly. And we get 2 different scenes where she's searching for Molly, and then later Molly is searching for her. And they're in this crowd of people surrounded by friends and like their classmates who they've known. And like they just feel so lost without one another. And it's just very sad and just conveys like, on one hand, like how much they've probably isolated themselves from others, but on the other hand, like how they are each other's person. And like they do feel really lost in this world without the other. Their fight is also very emphatic. Molly is like, I don't want to leave the party. I'm having a great time. Nick is really into me. Like, you're just being a baby. You're being a coward. And, you know, like Amy is like, you're just being a pushover. Like, you just always push us into whatever you want to do and escalates. And it's beautiful because I don't know if they're actually the same height. They're probably like 2 inches apart, but like they're the same height in this scene. And they're standing by the doorway. So the whole party is separate. And the camera, like they're fighting and they're lobbing these, insults and things at each other. And then at some point the volume goes down and the camera just continues to move very steadily between them. And it more tends to focus on the person who's reacting to what is being said rather than the person who's speaking. And it is so beautifully done. And it goes back to what I was saying about Malala, that like, we don't need to know what is said. We got the main points of why they're angry. And then it continues on for like another minute or so. But we don't need to know the details because we can see it in their acting, how absolutely hurt they are. We really see the way they're isolated and they've isolated themselves from others. They're physically separated from everybody else. They're very alone in this together. Everybody's kind of watching, unable to interfere because it's these two friends who've just known each other. Nobody else knows them that well. And it was just a beautiful way to show that they're so insular in that world and it's so cute and beautiful, but it's also sad when they turn on each other because they don't feel like they have anybody else. And both their acting is really good. They're both such good comedic actors, but they also have been in really good dramatic work. And I'm really astounded by both of them, to be honest. Like they have great comedic timing, great performance, great delivery, but I also know they've both done intense dramatic work. And they're extremely well-rounded and I think they really both carry the film. But I just really want to talk about the way that I think the fight and especially the party scene really drives home this idea about friendship. And, the climax of the film isn't when Amy finds out that Ryan is kissing Nick or when Molly finds out that Nick is kissing Ryan. Like the climax of the film is this fight because the movie is about friendship. It's about how do these two women who are entering a changing world and who are changing themselves continue to maintain this special bonds that they have. And it completely reflects what happens in high school. When you're in high school, like it's such a contained world. And when you go to college or when you leave high school, you're entering this bigger world and you're having to navigate things on a bigger scale and navigate more complexities. And I love that we get this story of this women on the brink of high school and entering the real world where they're trying to navigate like not just who they are, not just the complexities, but like how do we navigate this friendship while we are changing, while we are both growing into ourselves and becoming different people from who we've always been. And it's beautiful to have an extreme microcosm of this story that takes place over the course of a day, like probably like 27 hours. And I love that they told a story that was relevant for this age in such a small time frame and gives a taste of what these people are going through at this time. And I keep saying it was well done, but I really mean it. It was very well done. It just works on so many different levels. And we're going to wrap this up. That's all the story elements I wanted to get into, but I always like to wrap up with like a bunch of thoughts that are things that I don't know where to put elsewhere. Before I continue, though, I would love to hear what your thoughts are. If you have thoughts on any of the story elements or things you liked or didn't like about this film, please share them below for everybody to read, because I would love to hear different perspectives on the film, what you took away, what you found was weird or worked or didn't work. So please share them below. But let's dive into last thoughts that I wanted to share. I love that they have a friendship necklace. We saw friendship necklaces in our last movie, Promising Young Women. So it's never mentioned, never touch on. I've seen it so many times. It was only this watch or one of these watches that I saw they have like matching necklaces. It said A&M. I'm like, oh, like it's another way to just show how like connected they are. They probably got it together. I mentioned that they're both really great actresses, but like one scene that I was just completely blown away by Beanie Feldstein was after she finds out that, everybody's going to a great college, there's a water balloon fight in school and she gets soaking wet. And she's just in the car with Amy, like fuming mad. And it's a shot from outside the car as they're driving. And she is seething mad. And it's so visceral. And I was like, wow, like it is so good to be able to act in a way that you could feel it through the scene. It was just like a 3-second shot, but it was probably one of my favorite shots of the whole film. And again, like she's an actor who can really reach through the screen and connect with the viewer. And in that one moment, she really was. And I loved it. The film also doesn't ever try to tell us how smart they are. They're not like they're valedictorian, they're class president. They show us in the ways that they like research and, figure things out. But we also see that they're like not at all street smart and they're naive and have no idea what the real world is like because they get into the back of a pizza car. So I like seeing these things play out instead of necessarily being told it. Or really, we are told it, but we're told and we get to see it in real life. The last thing I liked is that, I guess touching on that, Molly is valedictorian, and we know that from the opening scene because it pans over her graduation robe, which is hanging up. But they never mention that Amy is salutatorian, and you only see it when she's running up the stage for graduation. She has like a sash that says salutatorian on it. And I was like, oh, like they really are the two smartest girls in school. And so much of their time probably was studying together and helping each other do extremely well in school. And it just reaffirmed like, they're so cute and they've really like bonded over being intelligent and being book smart and being cerebral and just having a lot of shared values around that. And so I like that it was never mentioned. I never noticed it before until one of the last watches. And I thought that was just really cute that they were valedictorian and salutatorian. Finally, I just want to end on a few filmmaking techniques that I think were brilliantly done. For starters, I love when they get high and they turn into Barbie dolls. And these are old school Barbie dolls that are just really not realistic proportions. And it's so funny because like everybody's seen the way highs or whatever are just like portrayed on screen. There's so many creative ways to do it. But I think the writers really asked themselves, like, what would blow these two girls' minds? And they're such strong feminists. They really believe in intelligent women, strong-willed women. They never necessarily value or they don't see themselves as sexual beings. And so they put them in Barbie dolls, which is probably the most mind-blowing thing that could happen. And I love that it is specific to them. It is like a specific horror of them. And it's funny and it is a bit of a plot point because they're just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Like this is wild. But then Amy's character is like, oh, I'm actually kind of sexy as a doll. And, she's high and it's whatever, but it goes against her like really strong feminist values. But it's a tiny moment that she starts to see herself as a sexual being. And I think that's important because we know that she's never like had any sexual encounters or any hookups or anything. And, and it's just like a tiny point on her path. I just love the way it was filmed. I heard it took like 3 weeks to do, and I think it was extremely well done. They wake up as the characters that they were cast in at the dinner party, and they're freaking out, and it's just really funny. And honestly, you should go watch the scene if you haven't, because it's great. The second thing I like is when they arrive at Nick's party, Amy has this momentary dream where like Nick sees her across the room and all the lights go down and they do like a musical theater number with like no words, but like they're just dancing like theater style across the house. And it's so cute. And it's just like, it was just her version, her very specific version of what would be romantic for her. And also tells us that she's like she likes musicals. So later when Jared is like, I really want to like design planes and then get rich and produce musicals, it creates a connection. Like it makes their connection seem very logical because we have deduced that she likes musicals and he's telling us that he would love to produce musicals. And it's just very cute. It doesn't feel random that she kisses him at graduation. Like they find several things to connect on over the film and it's very cute. And, I keep talking about specificity, but like the specificity is what makes things feel grounded and feel real and feel believable. And it drives the story. And I think the more specific, like the more powerful the story is. And these are just a few instances where the specificity really worked. The very last thing I want to talk about is social media. They see pictures of videos of the party on social media, and we know because like we're getting mostly horizontal shots of the party, and then it'll be like vertical for like 1 or 2 shots, and then horizontal. And they chose not to put any graphics on it, and I'm so grateful because personally, I hate seeing social media on screen. I hate when we're getting an image of what it would look like on someone's phone with like either the side banner on TikTok or the hearts or whatever. Like, I hate it because social media is so ever changing. And so when someone puts social media elements on screen, like, it could feel so dated within a few years because everything goes through like interface changes so frequently. So like, it made the film feel timeless. And it's interesting because the film was shot in like 2017, 2018. So really before TikTok ever popped off. And like, if they had decided to put any kind of logo on it, we'd be like, oh, that's weird. It's not on TikTok. Like, it would take you out of the film a little bit. And so I like that they didn't put any social media graphics on there. They just showed us a horizontal video of what they were seeing on their phones, or like a vertical video. And we only saw what we needed to see, and we didn't really get to see a lot of them watching their phone. It was more like we were just watching what was on their screen. And it's like a major pet peeve of mine when the film is like, there's people who are on social media on their phone, or they're just on their phones in film, because it is so boring. Like, there's a lot of films that I've tried to watch where the plot line involves like being on social media, like it's a major plot point, and I can't even watch it because it's so boring. And I'm so grateful that we didn't get any more than we needed. And I don't even think they meant to. It was probably just like a timing thing that they couldn't create graphics, but I'm really glad they didn't create graphics, because I'm telling you, whatever graphic or whatever social media platform they chose in 2017 is not relevant today in 2026. Or it's relevant, but like, it would have looked different now. So I'm really grateful they didn't do that. And that is it. That is all the analysis I have on this film. I mentioned earlier that I'm a screenwriter, and this film really made me realize like I can be so much more intentional with my scenes and my screenwriting. And I had this thought that I was like, I should write, when I'm writing a screenplay, it's not like I should write scene by scene, which is what I tend to do. I tend to be like, oh, where should the characters go? Where should they go? It's more, I guess I would love to be like, all right, an overarching plot scheme, what specifically should happen in this scene or this collection of scenes, and really like use that as my guiding star. That was a big takeaway I had. And I think another takeaway I had is like, edit the crap out of your work, like edit the crap out of anything you write. And please do not rely on AI to edit alone. But it really is through the editing that things begin to feel very seamless, and they feel real, and they feel lived in, and it just brings it to life. And I think this film, did I mention this? It had originally written in 2010, and the film was made in 2017. And over that time, it had gotten a few rewrites, a few updates, a few things to make it more relevant to teens today. And it really shows. Like, it feels like the world, the characters all feel very lived in. And I think that comes from a script that has just been rewritten and rewritten and rewritten to feel so natural. So I really want to shout out the screenwriters for this, because I think they did an amazing job. And if you're a screenwriter, if you're a writer of any kind, don't be afraid to edit. Like, just stop editing when you have to turn it in. But like, don't be afraid you're editing too much, because you're probably making it better. I've had like anywhere from 9 to 27 drafts of work. So I'm not someone who says there's too many edits. Maybe some people are, but edit your work. And yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this film, and we'll be back soon with the next one. I'll see you all next time. Bye.